Tim Blankenship here with Divorce 661. How you doing today? We're going over a rejected judgment. I got the bright idea of when clients hire me that I will redact all of their paperwork and then do a video on all the issues they were having with their divorce paperwork. Today we're talking about a case that was filed in 2021 in LA County. And keep in mind, everything I go over today will be apply for any court in California. So these issues are not just for LA County. They are across the board. This is, again, 2021 divorce case, was rejected 3 times by the court. The client was trying to do their own divorce. She retained me, and I did a full review of their divorce paperwork and found 10 plus issues that were causing her judgment to reject. To note here, the court only said this was the 3rd rejection, and all the court says, hey, you're missing this one form. And that happens a lot when the paperwork that's submitted to court is done so badly. There's so many errors. Like in this case, I found at least 10 issues that would cause her judgment to reject. When that happens, and this is every court, not just LA County, they're not going to go through it and tell you how to fix all these issues. It's not their job. It's to review it and approve it. And when there's multiple issues, they will just put 1 or 2 issues, reject it. Again, it's been a different issue every time. Now it was this. She thought she was getting close. She said, Tim, can you help me with this one thing? I said, no, unfortunately, I can't, because I don't know what else is wrong with your divorce unless I do a full review. And so she retained me, and I did a full review of her paperwork and found tons and tons of issues I'm going to go through with you. They are going to include issues with the initial petition, judgment package, individual forms with multiple errors. I'm going to go over them and show you what those corrections are so you don't make the same mistakes. I also do this as a full service. So if you'd like to retain me to take over your case, be happy to do so as well. Half of my business comes to me where people have had their judgment rejected or just filed and got stuck in the process somewhere and wanted me to take over. Happy to do so. So as you'll note on here, it was just one issue addressed when I went through it, found multiple issues. So I'm going to go through some of the paperwork. I've redacted all of the personal information. So there's nothing on here to show who this client of mine is. And let's just get started with some of the issues that I can't show you because I had to redact them. But what happened here is that they had used first name, middle name, last name on the petition, and then different info. They use like first name, last name on other paperwork. However you start your name, however you are listing your name, first, middle, last, or first and last, what have you, do that throughout the paperwork. If you change it up, it's going to cause a rejected issue. It's one of the things I had to clean up. They also did that with the children. They listed first, middle, last in some places, and first and last in others. And then again, first, middle, initial, and last in even other places, which will cause issues. So I had mentioned that was the issue here. We had to take care of that. The petition was actually not too bad. There were some things that didn't have to be attached, like this. It's not required that you attach an attachment. If you're just doing like joint legal or joint physical or whatnot, you don't need to have an attachment. In fact, they marked that there's an attachment and they didn't attach anything, kind of like the issue they did here on separate property, where they marked on the petition that there's a following list, but they listed no assets at all. So, marked that there was property, but listed none. I just made some notes here. And then I also see people marking the FL 160 box, but then not attaching it. That's probably a worse problem is marking this box and then not attaching it, because the court's going to say you didn't attach it. And you said, okay, well, I'll file the 160 later. But you can't, because it has to be attached to the petition. So it's usually going to result in you having to amend your petition. The terminate part was right, but I'm going to show you in the rest of the judgment package how they were doing that part wrong. We had some forms that had like 4 errors on just a single document. So same problem here on the separate property. They had listed their names again differently here. This part, the signature part's not so much problematic, but it's in the header part that was here when you're listing the name of the petitioner and respondent, where that can cause the problem. So that was just the petition. Caught some errors there. I brought this up because, again, this is where they use the different uses of the name in here on this form as well. This is when you have kids. So just make sure it's all the same throughout. It can cause you problems and even rejections throughout the process. What these folks did is they were trying to do a default without an agreement. That's going to be the number one issue here. But they were also indicating on some of the forms that it was a default with agreement, so it was confusing the court. And I'll give you an example here. So on one of the forms here, this is the declaration for default or uncontested. Number one issue, they marked that this is an amended, everything in the amended petition is true or correct, and there was no amended petition filed. So that would cause the judgment to reject, because this form would get rejected because there was no amended petition. Default with agreement is correct. That's what you want to do, but there was no agreement submitted, and the respondent was not even signing a settlement agreement. So this was wrong. This will be a default, whether it's default with or without an agreement. So this part's correct. Here's error number 2 on this form. Child custody and visitation. You have to mark either has or has not changed. This would cause this form to reject, which would cause the judgment to reject. Next issue. As I told you, the spouse support issue came up. She was asking to terminate on the petition and for both parties for spouse support, and here she marked only to petitioner. And not that this would go through, but basically what she's saying is terminate the support to me, but leave it open for respondent. So you can see how that can be very dangerous. So that was incorrect. Attorney's fees, there were no attorney's fees. So the fact that this box is checked is incorrect. And this would cause the judgment to be rejected, because this form would get rejected again for item number, this 4th error here on this form, because the court's going to say, well, what are you requesting? It's blank. So that would cause this to reject. Just leave it blank. Not required to be addressed. Okay, so now we're going to get into the actual judgment portion of it. And again, I do this because half my business comes to me from people that have had rejected judgments. And I think by doing this, I'll help you guys out. And maybe you'll say, you know what, this seems like a lot. I think I'm just going to give Tim a call, have him take care of it. So the 180. The 180, I've seen people turn these in as the entire judgment. It's just a face sheet. It's a cover sheet that says, here's what's going on, and here's all the terms behind this. So where she went wrong on this is because there's children involved. She did not mark this box. There's 2 things here. You need to attach a form FL 192 directly behind the 180, but they didn't mark this box because she didn't want there to be child support, so she thought this didn't apply. She also didn't even submit a child support order at all, which obviously is going to be an issue as well. But make sure you mark this box if there's children, whether or not you want there to be support or not. The other issues that came up on here is she marked the settlement agreement box for child custody, for child support, for property division, but she didn't attach a settlement agreement. There was nothing attached. I tell you to use the forms 341, 342, 343, 345. Just attach those. Those are going to make up the accumulation of those forms makes up your quote unquote settlement agreement. So you're going to want to mark those boxes and attach those forms. She didn't attach the forms or a settlement agreement, but was telling the court it was a default with agreement. So the court was getting very confused. I think so confused that they just rejected it on this one issue and said, hopefully she doesn't turn this back in, or maybe she'll get some help. One of the other issues that came up is on the final paperwork they submitted, because this was filed in 2021, the court, when they filed, the respondent lived in one state, and 2.5 years later, the respondent had moved to another state, and all they did is start using the new address of the respondent. You can't do that. It's going to cause your divorce to be rejected because it's not the address the court has on file. That would apply to you as a petitioner or the respondent. If you move, either use the old addresses, or if you are going to start using the new addresses, you don't just start putting new addresses on the paper. You have to file a change of address form. So I think we found 10 issues overall. When this was done, I'm going to show you some of the other forms and how that would be corrected. So we talked about, it's a default with agreement, but they're providing documents to the court showing that there is no agreement. Make sure you submit an agreement to the court. The respondent still has to do their preliminary disclosures as well. Let me pull up that. What I think their biggest issue was they're trying to do a default without an agreement instead of a default with an agreement, and then they were submitting a combination of forms for both types of divorce processes. So the respondent had signed, this is the only form, interesting enough, that the respondent had signed to waive final disclosures. That's fine. That's going to be one of the mandatory forms. But the respondent, even though they're not responding, also needs to do the preliminary disclosure form, the FL 141 here. So that needs to be done. And when it comes to the judgment, I had to redo the entire judgment to include all of the forms listed on the on the judgment order. So I had to complete her custody order. The custody order basically was just going to be joint legal and joint physical, and that's fine. It's very simple to do. You still need to attach it just to say that's what your terms are. The child support order, I believe she said she didn't attach this because she didn't want child support, but you still have to have the child support order attached just to say that's going to be reserved if that's what you're going to do. I can probably pull up that form real quick. Um, did I already have it open? Looks like I did. I did. So you're still going to want to complete this as your attachment, and you'll just mark the child support box, and you'll put the children's names, date of birth, and here, if you don't want there to be child support, you're just going to write reserved. And this will become your child support order. Again, whether you want some or not, you need to have none. Don't forget to change your address if you move. We talked about that. Oh, one thing I skipped over is this happened to be a long-term marriage over 10 years, and they were trying to terminate spouse support. You can't do that on a default without an agreement. It has to be a default with an agreement, and you need to have some additional waiver language when you're terminating spouse support on a long-term marriage. So they didn't have that. That would have been another rejected issue. I forget what number we are on now, is how many times this would have been rejected for all these issues. Using the same names, not having a child support order attached, final disclosures and preliminaries, we talked about that. And it's just interesting that the court had that one rejected item. And this is why I tell folks when they call for a consultation or email me, they say, Tim, I've done all my paperwork, as did this client. I've done all my paperwork. I need help with one thing. It's never one thing. I can't just look at one issue or look at what the court's saying is being rejected, because had I done this and maybe she paid me a couple dollars, she would have expected her divorce to be approved, and it obviously would not have, because there was so much incorrect. Fortunately, after I reviewed her petition and her proof of service, her preliminary disclosures, everything she had filed, that was fine. So we didn't have to start over. Many times we have to start over from scratch because of how the petition was prepared, that would cause ultimately the judgment to be rejected. And people argue with me and say, Tim, why did the court accept it if it's wrong? It's because they don't review anything until the judgment is submitted. That's when they pull your whole file and start reviewing everything from the very beginning. Until that time, they just file your paperwork and send you on your way. And you think everything's fine until you turn in your judgment, which happened here. So let me know you think. I'm considering doing this kind of on a pro bono free service where you send me your rejected judgment, and I'll go over the reject items and do a video for you. It kind of helps me come up with some creative content and helps you out at the same time. I know there's a lot of people out there trying to do their own divorce. Half of our business comes to us in that way. And I know that not everyone wants to hire us, or I should say, I'm sure they would like to hire us. Maybe they can't hire us financially or whatnot. Even with our fairly low cost, reduced flat fees, we would like to help everyone. But I think what happens is people think they've done so much of their own paperwork that it doesn't seem fair to have to hire someone at that point. But even though you might feel close, like this person who turned their judgment in 3 times, there's still a lot to do in many cases, and other reasons for it to be your case to be rejected. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll be doing more in the future.